Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. Fishing is a way of life in our coastal communities, but local fishers face growing challenges on and off the water. Fundy North Fishermen's Association represents small-scale commercial fishers from St. Stephen to St. Martin's in a region known as Lobster Fishing Area 36, or LFA 36. Executive Director Amanda Johnson joins us to discuss everything from setting day and life on the Bay of Fundy to the peaceful protest last year in St. Andrews, Fundy North's lobster fundraiser, and her work in Ottawa, advocating for independent fishers. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming and sitting down today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to learn more about what you do. I have attended your lobster fundraisers and the protests last year here at St. Andrews at the wharf, but I think a lot of people would really benefit from knowing more about Fundy Fishermen's Association, who you represent, from the number of fishers and where to the wharves that are also a big part of your job.
Yeah, so I'm the executive director at Fundy North, and we have two other staff. So I have an office admin person, and then I also have an assistant director as well. So we represent every lobster license holder in LFA 36, so from Alma all the way to the border, including Campbell and Deer Island. So we represent 20 different wharves across southwest New Brunswick in 36. And our lobster license holders, they are mandatory members of Fundy North, so they pay mandatory dues, and that's kind of how we stay afloat as we are a nonprofit. We also represent other species as well, because we are a multi-species fishery here in southwest New Brunswick. So we also represent scallop, groundfish, river for Gaspereau, herring weir, and I think that's it, if another one comes to me. So I participate in all of the fisheries management meetings for those species, but lobster would be our biggest file.
Wow, I mean, it's so fascinating. I think for people that live in southwest New Brunswick, I'm always surprised at how little so many of us know, even if we eat fish and chips all the time and lobster, about the industry itself. Tell us a little bit about the seasons and how they work here, and how like LFA 36 might be different from Grand Manan, which is 38?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have right now, I believe in total, we have 177 lobster licenses in 36 specifically, and we're around about 144-ish that are active. So with that, every single license in 36 has a trap limit, so we can fish 300 traps per license. The license holder does have to be an independent owner-operator, so they have to be on the vessel, they have to be the ones operating the license. That's quite different depending on which district you're in, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. So there's different trap limits and different harvest control measures depending on what district you're in. So we're kind of managed by regions. So the Bay of Fundy is in the Maritimes region, and then the districts that are in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, for example, are in the Gulf region. So we have different kind of regional directs with fisheries and oceans depending on which region you're in, and it's also managed very differently. All of our license conditions for each district are different. So even in comparison to Grand Manan, which is LFA 38, we work very closely with the Grand Manan Fishermen's Association. Their season goes from the second Tuesday in November to June 29th, and ours is a little bit different. So we also open on the second Tuesday of November and then close on January 14th, and then we reopen again at the end of March and then go to June 29th. So we have a split fall and spring season.
How cool. And setting day, you reached out last fall. I've always wanted to see setting day. And before I knew I wanted to see it, I didn't know what it was. And Bonnie Morris, actually, Mayor of Grand Manan, was the one who said, you really have to see it to fully understand. And then I was so pleased last year that you reached out to say, do you want to check out setting day this year? Here's a wharf, would be cool. So we went to Back Bay. I think we left at 4:30 in the morning. And it's honestly one of the best experiences of my life, because I felt like I was experiencing fishing culture, fishing families, and being out on a wharf watching the sunrise as the boats get ready to leave was spectacular, just for the experience itself. And that understanding of also like how dangerous this job can be too, with the young children there saying goodbye to their dad.
Yeah.
For people who don't know what setting day is, how do you explain it, and also why it's so important in this part of the world?
Yeah, so The lobster fishery is really like the foundation of our coastal communities here. We have so many small little coastal communities here in Southwest New Brunswick, and if you even look at like Deer Island and Campbell Island, those are true fishing islands to their core, and if you were to take the fishery away from them, there wouldn't be anything left there. I mean, young people would leave and go work elsewhere, and they would kind of be ghost towns. So the fishery itself is so important to these communities, and most that are participating in it are generationally entrenched in it. It's not just a job to them, like it's their entire livelihood. So the communities are really passionate about the fishery and about setting day. So fall setting day is a big deal, and I've been trying to create more awareness about it, and that's why I reached out to you last year, or I guess it was this year, so the past fall. That's like the big day. So we're closed right now. We reopen the second Tuesday in November. Right now, like guys are starting to come in and get their tags because they're going to start preparing their gear for the fall. The last few weeks, leading up to setting day, is when they're starting to like load their boats and get bait prepared, all of those things. So it's, in a lot of cases, it's like a family kind of event. And on setting day, we open at typically 0700. There is like a weather call a few days prior to setting day, so that's when all the port reps and myself and Fisheries and Oceans get on a call, and we review Environment Canada kind of weather report for the upcoming days, and depending on like wind speed, wave height, we evaluate whether or not it's safe to open. So if Environment Canada and DFO gives the green light that it is safe to open, then all the port reps actually vote yes or no. And if it's majority yes, then we know that we're opening on that day. If it's considered to be unsafe to open, then we do another weather call the next day and the next day, and until we kind of get a decision. So it can be really stressful for the captains and their crews because they don't know exactly when we actually are setting, even if it was a fixed date.
Right.
So they're trying to figure out like how much bait do they take out if their bait's frozen, and just how much groceries to have on board, even little things like that to get prepared to go. And then with that, our district is very long and very narrow. So when it might look on a map that there's so much room to set all of these traps and so much room for fishing, not all of it is lobster bottom. So there is like prestigious fishing grounds, and it's really turns into like a competition to who can get there first and who can get the bottom. Down this way where we're at around the islands, it's very congested. There's a lot of vessels down here. The majority of our fleet is down at this end of the district. So with that, it's even more competitive to get to the fishing ground. And that's kind of what makes setting day so exciting to be there or be on one of the boats, because you leave the wharf and it's really a race to get to where the majority of the boats are going, which is just off the Southern Wolves. So that is kind of what you would have saw when you were in Back Bay this fall. And I actually left from Head Harbor this year on one of our executives' vessels and was able to see it in real time. And it was really interesting for me because I represent these guys and I know that we are very congested out there by the wolves and that it's more or less a rat race to get there and who gets there first. But being there really put in perspective how close these guys really are and how close the gear is and how congested and competitive it really is.
Wow. I mean, I left with so many cookies, I will have to say, because the baking was incredible. Every fisherman was going out with a big bag of cookies, but also everyone who was there. And to see the lights on the water, as they all really do go towards the same location, it's just epically beautiful. And it wouldn't make, I don't know how I could be more proud to be from this part of the world when you see something like that take place. It's also so just special. When it comes to what you do, what is it that you do when you go to Ottawa? What kind of things are you fighting for?
So my main job, I guess, is advocacy for the fishery. So we are federally regulated by Fisheries and Oceans, and with that comes a lot of regulations, a lot of policy. And I'm in Ottawa quite often with the Canadian Independent Fish Harvesters Federation, advocating for independent owner-operator. So for us here in Atlantic Canada, there is an owner-operator policy embedded into the Fisheries Act. So that is federal legislation. And that means that to be a lobster license holder, you're an independent owner operator. So you own a small business. We call them small businesses on the water, the blue economy. And we're trying to protect that so that it remains that way, to prevent kind of big companies and large corporations coming in and buying up our licenses, because we want the economic wealth of our fishery and our licenses to remain in our coastal communities. And when owner operator starts to get eroded, it's going to take that away from our communities. So right now, if a license holder, they're spending the money that their vessel makes in their communities. They're also employing crew in their communities and providing jobs, and they're using local mechanics and buying fuel locally, all of those things. And if you were to compare it to a large corporation, they're just not going to run their business that way. So I think a lot of people don't really understand, like when they see a vessel, that's no different than seeing like a storefront on Water Street. Like they're just as valuable to our coastal communities, every single boat that's tied up at the wharf.
And so many of these fishers, I was with you yesterday, I should say, with Dr. Moira Brown, who's part of Campobello Whale Rescue, because fishers are often working alongside whale rescue and things like this. Joe Howlett, who we speak so highly of in this part of the world, is a wonderful example of that. So you do work also alongside a lot of these groups that are here to protect species as well when it comes to equipment and even being those helping hands on the boat. So I think that's another important thing to highlight, is just how closely tied you are to those organizations as well.
Yeah, we work really closely with those organizations, and we're also trying to do our very best for like marine conservation. I always say no one cares more about the health of our oceans and our marine life than fishermen. Their livelihoods depend on it. And I think it can be a common misconception that fishermen are just there to overfish and make a profit, but they are dependent on the ocean for their way of life. So we need it to remain sustainable for as long as it possibly can, in order for our fishery to remain sustainable for future generations as well. So like one thing that Fundy North is really passionate about has been ghost gear retrievals, and we've been doing ghost gear retrievals for over 15 years now, I think, and have received like several national and international awards for our ghost gear efforts. So that means that here in the Bay of Fundy, like as some people know and some people don't, we have very large tides and very strong currents. So sometimes fishing gear can actually just get picked up and swept away with the tide or with the current, and that results in lost fishing gear, which is an endangerment for whale species, especially the North Atlantic right whales. So we have been able to get funding each year for the last 15 years for ghost gear efforts, and have also invested some of our own money, and then have some in just other partners in the community as well that are donating for us towards our ghost gear retrieval efforts. So we have our own captains that go out and they're grappling for lost gear. There's several areas off of Campobello that are kind of well known for, I guess it's just the way that the currents work. It's where like snarls of gear end up together. It almost looks like the hay things that you see rolling down the road. Like the gear all ends up together. So they go out there and grapple for it, and we're doing our very best to make an effort to clean up the ocean bottom as well.
When it comes to being where you are located, which is, we have American neighbors, I could basically throw a rock from my house and hit Maine. It feels, I was in Eastport last week actually for a public meeting on AI data centers, and a huge part of the group that was there were fishers from all over the region that were worried about not just how this could impact, their day-to-day, but also the temperature of the bay. So very concerned with what was going on all levels. When it comes to what you do, when it comes to dealing with another country so close by, how big of an issue is that when it comes to maybe what their rules are and what our rules are?
It can be difficult because just fisheries management between Canada and the US is very different. I mean, we have seasons here in Canada. The US doesn't, so they could fish 365 days a year if they choose to, whereas we are kind of bound to the seasons that are set for each district. And there is a lot of kind of sovereignty issues there as well. I will say, like, a lot of our fishermen have fishers that they are friends with in the US, and they see them across the border. And like you said, you can throw a rock over and you can throw it and it's right into the Gulf of Maine, technically. So we do have some issues with gear being set over the international line. So American gear being fished in Canadian waters, which is something that our local CMP officers, our fisheries officers are very aware of, and they patrol that a lot during the summer because our fishery is closed, but theirs is not. And just stock assessment and everything is very different between the two countries, but at the end of the day, we are fishing the same stock. I mean, the lobsters don't know that there's an international boundary line through the water, so they come and go as they please, but however, we are not able to do that. So the water temperatures for us are kind of a significant concern because it is directly related to lobster movement. And we've seen historically over the last few years that landings seem to be trending down, and it seems like lobsters are traveling north because our waters here are colder. So there's a lot of unknown there, but environmental factors are a big concern for us. And then just with regulations and everything just seems to constantly be coming at us from every single direction, and you're just trying to do your best to stay on top of it all because we really want to protect our fishery here.
I learn so much every time I talk to you. One thing you were telling me about the other day, and I hate that I'm not going to remember it exactly, but I think everyone at home is going to appreciate knowing. You were talking about the lobster quality from this part of the world, and how we get harder shells, which is better served for like a full lobster meal. Okay, I'll let you say it better than me.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm not a scientist, but one of the main differences between kind of the Gulf region and the Maritimes region for the Bay of Fundy is that if you were to look at kind of a map of all of the districts and look at the seasons, the Gulf is fishing in the spring and the summertime, and we're fishing in the winter, so it's very different. If you're in kind of eastern New Brunswick, the boats are a lot smaller. They're fishing, I believe, right now, actually, and it's quite beautiful weather. Whereas we're fishing in the dead of the winter for the most part, in terrible weather. So there's a big difference just in the practice of fishing itself. With that, Bay of Fundy lobster is known for being harder shell, and I believe it's because we're fishing it in the wintertime. It's to do with lobster molt. Again, I'm not a scientist, and we have a science director on contract that is an expert on all of those things, but our lobster, for the most part, is sold for the live market. So a lot of our lobster is exported out to China and Asia and is sold for kind of that beautiful little lobster you see on the plate. And it's more common for Gulf lobster to be processed. So there's a lot of processing plants in northern and eastern New Brunswick, and that's for that reason, for lobster processing. Obviously, some of our lobster has gone to be processed as well, but Bay of Fundy lobster is world renowned for hard shell.
LFA 36 proud. It's cool to learn these things though, and it really makes me have an even deeper appreciation, not just for our region, but for the work that the fishers of our area do, because to go out in those temperatures, even just standing on the wharf is cold that time of year. So hats off to them for how they're able to do it day after day. When it comes to what you are, the challenges ahead, what are the biggest concerns right now, areas that you're really focused on?
So owner-operator, I kind of touched on that. So we're really looking at strengthening owner-operator. This past fall or spring, the Minister of Fisheries announced a comprehensive review of the inshore regulations. So I've participated in every review session so far for that. So the Canadian Independent Fish Harvesters Federation, which I have a board seat for the province of New Brunswick on, was invited to participate directly in that review with the policy experts in Ottawa. So I've been traveling up there this year quite frequently, and we're really diving into the regulations and around license transfers. So that would be the sale of a license, to tighten up any loopholes there that could prevent a company from coming in and having control or exercising control over that license by loaning funding. So with that, funding is obviously a huge issue. I think a lot of people don't realize like the overhead that's involved in owning a lobster license. So here in LFA 36, I believe right now, like the piece of paper itself is worth about $600,000. And that is strictly for the license, so the piece of paper. With that, you also need a fishing vessel, you need gear, you need to buy bait, you need to employ a crew, there's fuel. So the cost to operate has just continued to get more and more every single year, which has made it way more difficult for new or young entrants to come into the fishery, because you're really looking at about like a $1 to $2 million investment to just get in. And the fishery itself is very high risk, high reward. So you can't predict in a business plan how much fish you're going to catch every year. You can have a rough idea by looking at landings historically, but even with operational costs, I mean, this year fuel has been through the roof, and it's consistently stayed there throughout the entire year. So fuel this year has been a huge hit to our guys and for operating costs. Bait has also been really hard to get and has gone up in price as well for that reason. So operating costs continue to go up. And the problem with the fishery is that we have no control over the price. So the price is more so set by the market. And I really think, and I've said this a few times this year, that we're the only kind of like natural resource sector that does not set the price for work that's being done. So, I mean, if you're a contractor even, or you're self-employed in any way and you quote someone for work, you're going to set your price for what it costs to do that job. And our fishermen are typically landing lobster for the first week at least of fall and have no idea what they're being paid for it. So they're paying for bait and all of those things up front, for fuel and gear to get ready for fall season, but they have no idea how much money they're going to make right out the gate. So they are landing lobster every single day for the first 7 to 10 days of fall, and typically don't know for about almost 2 weeks sometimes what they're being paid per pound. Wow. And it depends on several different factors, and the price often fluctuates throughout the season as other districts open as well. So that makes it really difficult to project kind of what your profit and loss might be at the end of the year. Same with the cost of fuel. We have no idea what that's going to be. We really hope that it goes down, but that doesn't seem to be the way that it's been going. So to bring that back to like the work that I've been doing is we've been advocating for like a new federal funding program for low interest loans for new entrants specifically, or for like provides harvester stability as well. Because the problem with the corporate or company control is that not a lot of banks want to loan a young person $2 million, and it's really hard to get access to that capital as well. So if we can get the federal government to even incorporate us, we've proposed with Farm Credit Canada, for example, and model after some agriculture programs that already exist and kind of bring fisheries into it, it would provide another avenue of funding so that, say, if I was a new entrant and I've been told no by the bank that I'm not going to receive a loan for me to buy an enterprise. What a lot of people in my position might do is go to a local buyer, like lobster buyer, and ask them for a loan, which is entirely legal. I mean, we have it in the regulations as it is that you can borrow money from a non-RFI, so a non-registered financial institution. But what has started happening over the years is that in the agreement itself, there's kind of an element of control being embedded into that. So what you as a license holder actually just becomes a shareholder, and the person loaning you the money has control over the actual outfit, and they are really tying you into a place that will be impossible to get out of. There's some situations where it might be even after you pay off your loan, you still have to sell to them for the duration of the entire time that you have your license. Or if you default on a payment, then you might have in your agreement that you would have to transfer the license to someone else, in which case you're giving up your own license and then you have nothing left. So these situations exist here in southwestern Brunswick, in LFA 36, in LFA 38, and Southwest Nova as well. And we're really trying to reduce the impacts from that, because we do have fishermen here locally that are at risk of losing their vessels or have signed their licenses over as collateral and are at risk of losing everything. And it's just simply because landings have been declining while the stock has remained in the healthy zone over the last number of years. Landings have been declining. So where we're not setting the price, and then our other species as well have also declined, there's nothing there to bridge the gap. So at the end of the day, the only option is to fish even harder. And to do that still costs more money.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to protect owner-operator, try and advocate for a new funding option that is low interest, that's going to enable new entrants to get in, because that's another thing, is kind of protecting the fishery for future generations so that young people see it as something that is sustainable, that they can do for the rest of their lives, and that their kids can do and their kids can do. And right now we're not really trending in that direction. And then aside from that, there's just so many other things that are happening that are threats with like marine protected areas, for example, that would result in lost fishing grounds. So like I said, we're always kind of have little things coming at us, but like owner operator and protecting the fishery so that it's sustainable for new entrants is our main two priorities when we're in Ottawa.
And when I think about what that adds to our culture as a whole, not just the food we serve, but who we see ourselves as a place as well, to lose that next generation and the generations after that would diminish our identity in so many ways. And also from the economic perspective, this adds so much to our economy. Can you speak to that point?
Yeah, I have some numbers. I'll read them from my phone, because I'm like, while I know a lot, I don't know them off by heart. So the numbers that I have that are the most recent, that aren't preliminary, are from 2024. But just for context, in 2023-2024 season, our district itself, the landed value, so that would be like the wharf price landed value of lobster in LFA 36, was $49.4 million. And the record value during what's known as kind of the lobster boom was, this would have been during that time period, was 2017, 2018, and the record value was $62 million. So just even in that time frame, you can see that there's quite a big difference there. But still, even economically, so the LFA 36 fishery is one of the most important in Canada, and the annual catch is ranked 4th amongst the LFAs across Atlantic Canada in recent years, including direct, indirect, and induced effects in 2024. LFA 36 boosted provincial GDP by $109 million, employment income by $61 million, and household spending by $46 million. LFA 36 supported 1,084 full-time equivalent jobs during the year and boosted government tax revenue by nearly $28 million. Directly, LFA 36 itself boosted provincial GDP by $52.4 million. So we may be a small district and a small association, but our value goes far beyond that number socially and economically.
Wow. Incredible. And I think these are important numbers for us to stress to people at home, for us to also be really proud of as a region. And we didn't even scratch the surface of wharves today, because this is also part of your roster of the things you represent. So what I have to say, Amanda, is would you please come back again soon so we can continue this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
My guest today has been Amanda Johnson, Executive Director of Fundy North Fishermen's Association. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.